Archiving started.
Keep it going. Okay. So, big news last night. WordPress 3.4 came out, which is, pretty good timing for this class because we're gonna just kind of go through that real quick and discuss a few things. Today, though, we will be talking about working with themes. And there's a lot of stuff to go through. Hoping to get through in 2 hours. I might go a little over. If you need to leave, that's fine. I don't know if you saw, but last time we recorded it, put it on YouTube, and put it on the WP training site that I set up. And we're going to do the same thing for this class and the next 2 classes. So, WordPress 3.4 named green. Every WordPress update, or major update like 3.3, 3.4, is named after something to do with jazz, because the founder of WordPress really likes jazz music. So green is Grant Green, and there's a lot of interesting updates to this version. So in the real world, I would ask you to back up your database and your files before you update. We're not going to do that because I've generally never had a problem updating, but you can never be too safe. All right. There's also something else we're going to talk about today, and it'll be a good example because there's 2 updates for the WordPress themes from 1.3 to 1.4. Today we're going to be creating a child theme. We don't have time to create a brand new theme from scratch. And then we're going to be creating a child theme of the 2011 theme. Now, some people go ahead and they activate the 2011 theme, and then they start modifying it. And then there's an update, and they update it, and they lose all their changes. By creating a child theme, you completely avoid that risk. If there's any issues or problems with your child theme, you can easily fix them. But generally speaking, all the functionality will stay the same, and you won't have any problems. Any core changes to the parent theme just work, and you don't have to worry about it. So we'll update our themes, and that took 4 seconds. And we'll go back and we'll update WordPress. And there we go. So this is one of the reasons why I love WordPress, because you don't have to spend an hour updating it. Other content management systems are not as flexible and easy as WordPress has made it. And also to this point, you don't want to change the WordPress core files. WordPress has tried really hard to make it easy to customize the core without changing the core. And we're going to be going over some of that stuff today. So today, we'll be talking about the template hierarchy, primary style sheet, functions PHP, custom page templates, a little bit about query-based template files. It's not that important, but I want to just touch on it. The loop, WP query, child themes, which we'll be creating one, and we're going to create a custom post type and custom text on it. All right. The template hierarchy. Let's open this one here. There's 2 files that are required in the template. Index.php and style.css. Index.php is basically your PHP HTML content, and style.css tells WordPress what the theme is and offers any sort of styling you want to add to that. Now, you don't want to create a theme with just index.php because it'll get too muddy and complicated, basically. So there's several different template files that are built into WordPress that you can use. There's the 404.php, which you can use to create a 404 page if something's not found. Search.php for search results. archive.php. This should be if if somebody clicks on June posts, they want to see everything that was posted in June. This archive.php is what would be used. Single.php is a single post. So you have your list of posts from June. They click on the title of one of those posts. Single.php is what will display that post. Page.php is the template that is used to display your pages. So there's posts and pages by default in WordPress. So you can see here, posts and pages. In the database, like we saw last week, they're stored in the same place. They're just a post type. Post type of post and a post type of page. Home.php, this is kind of confusing. So there's a function called isHome and there's a function called isFrontPage. And those two things, isHome and isFrontPage, are two different things. isHome is related to the home page of the blog posts, and isFrontPage is related to the front page of your site. A lot of people get that confused because usually you have a home button on your website and you click home and it brings you to the front page. But that's not necessarily the same. They're not necessarily synonymous in WordPress. Comments-popup.php. In my 5 years working in WordPress, I have never once used this. But it will pop up comments if you want to. There's also three other ones that we're going to talk about right now: header.php, footer.php, and sidebar.php. So what is common is you'll have index.php, and you will use this function, get header at the top. Then you have a content block, and then get sidebar and get footer. And this is just, kind of basic templating like you used to do in HTML. With includes, you'd include your header.php. That way you don't have to keep rewriting it. So when you're doing your page.php, you can do get header, content, get sidebar, get footer. Or if you don't have a sidebar, you don't need to call that function at all. But again, really these are all completely optional. They're just recommended. But it's a lot more complicated than that. And I don't really like this graphic because I think it's so big it needs to go the other direction. All right. When you visit a page in WordPress, it asks a question. This is the flowchart. What type of page is this? Is it a 404 page? Is it a search page? Is it an archive page? A single page? A front page? A blog post index page, which is home? Or a pop-up page? So if it's the front page, you could create a file called front-page.php that had a custom look and feel to it, and you wouldn't have to worry about creating a custom template and telling that page to use that template, which we'll discuss later. And is the front page shown on the front of the site? If it is, and it's a page, then it will basically, if front-page.php doesn't exist, it will see if it's shown on the front. If it's a page, then it goes to the page templates. It looks for custom or default. You can do custom.php or page-slug. So page-slug would be, for this one, blog or syllabus. The slug, the actual slug, is right there. Case sensitivity is important with these file names, by the way. And also page-id. So if you have a specific page, like a syllabus page, you could create page-syllabus.php, and when somebody visits that page, it's going to read that as the template for that page, and it won't read it for any other template for that page. And so it gets pretty confusing, especially with the archive pages, because there's custom taxonomy archives, category archives, tag archives. author archive, date archive, and custom post type archive. So a custom post type, you could do archive dash and then the post type name, whatever it's registered as. We'll do this today. And we'll also do the custom taxonomy, and we'll do taxonomy dash taxonomy name. The interesting thing about taxonomy is you can also do specific formats for a term in that taxonomy. So we're going to create a taxonomy today called resources, and or resource categories actually. And one of those resource categories is going to be books. Another one might be websites. We could create taxonomy dash resource underscore cat, whatever we call our taxonomy dash books.php. When people visit that archive page for that taxonomy, that is the page that will display the content. So an example would be, I've built a website for a church, and they wanted their sermons categorized in a certain way, so we created a custom post type, and we used this for their sermons to display in a table and sortable and stuff like that. But the other stuff that they had, like links to materials, would be displayed in a different way. So look at the 404 page. It uses 404.php. If none of these are found, it uses the index.php, which is why that file is required. Is this all clear as mud? This picture is a really good picture to reference. It needs to be turned around though, I think. So you can actually scroll up and down rather than left and right, because it's just too much. It used to be a lot smaller. This is actually the reason it's so big now is because WordPress had added a custom taxonomy and custom post type, which it's been around for a while now, but beforehand you just didn't have as much flexibility as you do now. That's one of the things that Drupal had over WordPress for a little while. But this template hierarchy page, it goes through and tells you what all of these pages do. So it's a good resource. Okay. The primary style sheet. In your theme, it needs to have style.css. The style CSS needs to have at least a theme name commented at the top. We look at 2011 style CSS. It has a theme name here. I would recommend doing everything that it accepts. Theme URI, the author URI, description of what it does, version. You don't need the license if you don't want to. It's assumed to be GPL if you don't put a license. And tags, if you do create a theme for WordPress and you put it and you upload it to WordPress's theme site, one, it'll be reviewed, which is good. But two, you need to have tags so people can search it and find your theme. And then you'd start including your normal CSS stuff. But the theme name is the only thing that's technically required. So when we go to appearance themes, if it doesn't have a theme name, it won't display here. There are some default WordPress classes that you should define in your style.css. There have been a number of times in the past that I have worked with clients who have installed third-party themes, and then they add an image to their post, and they put it all nice and fancy with little text block underneath, just the way that WordPress does it in the back end, and they hit publish, and they look at the front page, and it looks horrific. So the first thing I do is I go to this page, which is the CSS page. I go down to WordPress generated classes, and I just copy this. And I stick it in their style.css. And it will just clean up the formatting. It has align none, align center, align right, align left. These are all things that the WordPress GUI editor does for you when you click the buttons to go left and right and center. Image align left, image align right, all this stuff. WP caption, this is something that would be under an image. And that's it. Not that much. And you don't have to keep these formattings, these formats. You can change them, but you should have the CSS calls, the class calls. Okay. Functions.php. Your theme can also include a file called functions.php, and it acts basically like a plugin. There has been long-standing debate in the WordPress community about themes versus plugins. The Thesis guy, the guy who created the theme Thesis, very popular. He is very anti-plugin. He believes that themes should do everything that you need them to do. I generally disagree with him because there's so many things that you might want to do that themes just can't do. So you do things in the functions.php, like you can enable featured images, you can enable new menus, new sidebars. The post thumbnails is the featured images that I was talking about. Post formats, we saw that in 2011, there are post formats right here. And they're just formats that do specific things for a specific type of post. If you have a blog that serves images and text, you might want to do a post format for your image post and a post format for your text post. And of course, you can define several types of functions and many other things. Oh yes, the options menu. This is where you include all your theme options and header and background stuff. But we will not be going over this stuff today because it is much too complicated. We don't have enough time. But I would recommend looking at, well, first off, you can look at this functions file information. It tells you various things. Also, look at the 2011 functions.php or the 2010 functions.php. It's a good example of code that you can replicate. And those guys do code very well. All the contributors to WordPress is very highly vetted. And I know personally I've learned a lot about coding just working with WordPress. Okay. We're getting through this. The loop. In WordPress, there is something called the loop. Let's pull up index.php. This is from 2011 theme. And right here, actually right here is the loop, but really it starts here. If have posts. This is basically saying, are there any posts to display on this page? If there are, continue. So at the very beginning of the page load, WordPress does some stuff to see if it has any posts relevant to the page that's being displayed for that specific template. This just asks the question, are there any posts? Okay, there are. While there are still posts, this basically gets the post, it initializes the post variable, and as I discussed, I don't know if it's on here, we will be discussing this query-based template files. This is what this get template part thing is. So get the post, and then we're gonna display that post with this function get template part. I don't generally use this. I think it clutters the theme more than is necessary. It's not bad. I mean, I might start using it in the future. But so you see these content dash aside, content dash featured, content dash gallery. Those are all those post formats. So to get the post format, and say it's a gallery, it's an image gallery. So the way that get template part function works is it basically gets this variable and this variable to make this template file, get content dash gallery. And then this is, the HTML that displays that with the mixed in PHP. So this displays the post, or the posts, plural. And there's a lot in here, obviously. The 2011 definitely is HTML5 ready. That's why it has all these things in there. So again, it's a nice code base to look at just to get an idea of HTML5 stuff. I wouldn't necessarily say use 2010 for every theme you build, but it'll help you learn HTML5 a little quicker, I think. So content gallery, this right here is the title. There's the title function. And so what the title function does is it calls a function and it uses that initialized post variable, the global variable. And just various other things. If is search. So if this page is being displayed because somebody searched for a term, then it will display the excerpt, which is in WordPress you can create the excerpt manually. By the way, I added this plugin. So you create a post, and then there's a sentence in the middle of the post that you want to use that has the post excerpt. That's what would display if it was there. If you don't have anything specified in excerpt, WordPress will take content from your post content, create its own excerpt, and just use that. And there are ways to modify how that behaves. Let's see. It'll check to see if there's a password required. For the gallery, it will get children, which is all the images attached to that post for this specific call. So get children, the post parent is the post ID. So when you upload an image in the post box, it says that this is my post parent. Post type is attachment, image is the menu type, and then menu order and order by ascending versus descending. In number of posts is 999. So you could have a post with 999 images in it, and it would display. It would get all of them, and then it would display them with these functions. And so this is one of the reasons why I think 2011 is such a good theme to look at, because they do so much stuff. You can learn so much. And these functions like WP get attachment, it's super easy to see what it does. Just Google it. Usually it's going to be the first hit, and you'll see the function reference, what it does, what you're specifying as arguments, what the default is, and usually expected result and examples. So the return value is an HTML image element. So it'll output the HTML that displays that image for you. The permalink is just the link to the post. Permalink, title, number format, category list. This is just another function to list all the categories. So what this actually does is it'll get all the categories, and it gets them as HTML with this function. So it'll be, if your post is attached to 5 categories, it will have all 5 with the href tags attached to them. And so if we look at this, you'll see that there's more. Yeah. You can specify the separator, specify the parent of the category that you want, and the post ID. Those last, all of them are optional. The post ID is assumed, but if you want to get the categories of a specific post, say in a widget on your sidebar, you might want to specify the post ID. And same thing with the get tag list. So there's 2 taxonomies built in by default to WordPress posts, categories and tags. And they're basically the same thing, except categories can have parents, tags can't, technically. What that means is you can have a category called books and then a subcategory called fiction and nonfiction. Tags, you can have a tag called books, and you can have a tag called fiction and a tag called nonfiction, but they're not related to one another. So you could, in theory, create a post and tag it books, fiction, nonfiction, or put it in a category. In fact, you can put it in a category, books, fiction, nonfiction. But if you click on books, you'll see all the, or you should see all the stuff in the books category as well as the children category. So if you click on fiction, you'd only see the stuff in the fiction category. Does that make sense?
How does it show up in the category? Does it have the children of the...
You mean in the back end?
Fine.
No, it would be, it'd be straight down like a normal list of posts. You could format it, I suppose. The problem is, though, generally speaking, that it's so mixed up that you can't really do that. But it is possible, of course. So this is the content gallery. Now, of course, if you look at content page, it's a lot smaller because it's, it's just a page. It's just displaying text. That's all they're intending for it to do. And the content function displays all of the content. So if there are images or something in there, it'll display that. All right, but that's not all. The old way to modify the loop was to use the function query posts. And this is a quote from their site. Whoops. It's the easiest but wrong way to alter the default query that WordPress uses to display posts. Now, there's several reasons why you may want to alter the query. Say you want the front page to display only the posts that are in a certain category. The old school way of doing this would be before that have posts line, if have posts, you'd stick query posts right there, and you add cat equals and then the ID of the category that you're wanting to display.
Only in one.
On any page, really. So if you had another page that was supposed to display your blog posts, but you wanted to hide all the blog posts in the featured category, you could do, again, before that have posts, query posts, cat equals minus the ID of the featured category. And this is the way that generally most people do it. The reason that this is a problem is people sometimes use this for, say, a sidebar widget. And this function modifies the main query. So if you have a sidebar that gets called before the post page, then you're going to run into an issue where the post page says, I don't have any more posts. There's no more posts. The have post thing, the function that says, are there any more posts in this page, has gone through all the posts because you had it in your sidebar already. There's a function called WP reset query that will reset to default, or maybe it's reset to default query. But it's generally just not a good idea to use this. So there's also another function called get posts, and that returns an object. So query post and get posts use the same arguments. So it's essentially the same thing, it's just a little different, because you also need to run a command called setup_post_data on the object that you're hitting the get post function, and that will set the post variable for you. I've had issues with that in the past. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, and I haven't figured out why. I haven't looked into it. There's usually ways around it. And the same thing with the WP_query class, which all these use. So you could create a new WP_query object with the same arguments, basically, as the query post or get post argument. But in WordPress 3.3, there became a better, more recommended solution, which is using the pre_get post action hook. We will do this today. You'll see why and what I'm talking about. This is the best solution, and it's really tiny, but these are all the stuff related to the loop. Query post, get post, WP query, pre-get posts. There's a function called isMainQuery. So when we run the hook on this action pre-get post, we're going to check to see if it's the main query. And then there's these three. I think these are from various WordCamps. They're all about the query and the loop and the best practices. And actually, I didn't even know about this pre-get post action hook until last night. I saw this. I have known this for years, and I asked on Twitter, and Justin Tadlock messaged me and said that this was the best solution. I looked into it and saw that it was introduced in 3.3, which is my excuse for not knowing about it, because there's so much stuff in WordPress. But this is the best solution, and we're going to use it today, and you'll see. And best solution basically means it's the one that is going to be the most efficient. It's going to cause the least amount of trouble for you, the least amount of confusion for you. It is a little bit more complicated to do, but it is best. All right, child themes. To create a child theme, you just need to create a new directory in the themes directory. So we're going to create one right now. New folder. We're going to call it WP Training. And I will zip up this child theme and make it available for people to look at when we're done. The only required file in a child theme is style.css. If you include index.php, it's probably going to break things. You can do it, but then you're not really creating a child theme as much as you're just creating a new theme. So let's create style.css. Open it up. And the only required ones are the theme name and template. So theme name should be training. You see that? Template. Our parent theme is going to be 2011. It's case sensitive. It's not the theme or the template name. It's really like a template slug, which is basically the directory name. It needs to be spelled the exact same way. Alright. Now we should import the parent theme CSS. I'm just going to copy this. Change this to 2011. Okay. This is technically all we need. So let's just upload this. Now, if you want to change some CSS, people would be asked to change the CSS in the parent theme. But all you have to do is redefine it here. So let's look at our site. Here's themes, and hopefully I did it right. Here's my Choppy training by Anonymous, because I did not include an author name. So if I wanted to, what is it, author? Author. Author. Alright. We upload and refresh. And there's my name and a link to my site. Oh, we didn't talk about the changes for WordPress 3.4. Live preview, pretty cool. There's our thing. It looks so much different than our current one. Actually, it looks like a bug. There is a difference here. It has a home page, a blog page, day one, and syllabus. This just has syllabus and day one. I like it. But let's activate it. It may just be the live preview, maybe a menu. Okay. So let's go to menus. Refresh. There we go. Okay. Now let's say that I don't like this big white area up here. And this is why I wanted to create a child. Don't want to modify 2011 because when there's an update, all my changes go away. So it's easy to do. You can do it in CSS. There's a number of ways, but we're just going to do it in CSS just for fun. We're going to grab this CSS here. And re-upload. Then refresh. And there it is. Now my search thing is still here, which is kind of ugly. We could get rid of it, same way. Because I do have a, no, I guess I don't. I thought I had a search box there. But let's get rid of it anyway. Feeling reckless. And refresh. And the search thing's gone. So that's just something you could do to change it. If you wanted to make this image smaller, WordPress actually, I don't know if it still has the changes on here. No. WordPress has done something to make it easier to change the header. I haven't looked into it. Let's see it in here. Oh, if you wanted to change the header from the 2010 version, if we look at the 2011 version, if we look at 2011 functions.php, we'll see these definitions, the header image width and the header image height. And then you see these filters. So a filter is like an action hook, except a filter you can modify the value. So the filter, 2011 header image width 1000, and 2011 header image height 288. We could add a filter to our child themes functions.php, change the height to 144, making it in half, cutting it in half. And it will affect this site, so that next time we upload an image, it can be cropped to 144.
If you do a functions.php in your child theme, it accesses that, does it ignore all the other stuff as previously?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I think I skipped over that. Oh, yeah. Right. So if you add a functions.php to your child theme, it will be loaded in addition to the parent functions.php, but before the parent's version. So your function gets priority, then the parent function. So if you're creating a theme that may have child themes, it might be important to add if function exists before you define the function, just like they do here. If function exists, 2011 header style. So then in my child theme, I can actually do function 2011 header style, and I can completely change what this does. And then when it loads the parent functions.php, it's checking, does this function already exist? If not, create the function. So generally speaking, whenever I'm writing anything like this, I would do if function exists around it, just because you never know when you're going to run into a conflict. Especially when you get into plugin development, because there's so many plugins out there. I try to be really specific and long with my function names, like my plugin name underscore specific action of the function, because you can run into some problems with another function that uses a similar name. You shouldn't just use like change post as a function name, because who knows how many other plugins could use that for various reasons. You know, somebody installs your plugin and then somebody else's plugin, they get a big fat error. You know, this function's already defined. So at least if your function exists, you'll reduce the risk of that happening. Of course, if they don't use functions exist and you do, and your plugin gets called first, it's still giving an error, but at least it wouldn't be your fault at that point. Yeah. So we created a child theme. That was easy, huh? And it basically does everything that the 2011 theme does, except now ours doesn't display that header and search bar. Probably won't keep that setting, for this example. But it just shows you that, you know, any CSS file, the commands at the bottom supersede commands at the top, assuming that they're the same command. Now, I won't get into CSS, but sometimes you will run into issues if you're referring to a class versus an ID, and you're thinking you're changing something and it's not changing. Just make sure you're doing it right.
That's different than functions.
Yeah.
Functions would be loaded first in priority. CSS would be loaded last.
Well, the CSS actually, the style.css file is the only file that it will be loaded. It will not load the other one. That's why we add this import line.
You're just redefining it.
Right. Right.
So basically, whenever you want to modify something, say you want to modify the footer, you always should not do it in the name of the copy it or into the file folder, then, you know, override.
Yeah. Yep. So any, and like I said, you wouldn't necessarily add an index.php here, but say 2011 has a single.php. I could add a single.php here and change completely the way that it displays single.php. It will not load 2011 single.php if I have one in my thing. So basically, with that hierarchy chart we were looking at, it's going to say, oh, this is a child theme. I'm going to check to see if any of these things exist for that child theme. If not, I'm going to check to see if any of those things exist for the parent theme. And the only time that's not true is with the functions.php, which is loaded both times. Okay. So I've created a number of PHP things that we're going to start adding to our personal functions.php. Obviously, with any PHP file, it should start with PHP. And we'll just open this up. I wanted to start tracking analytics on my website. So I wrote a function that does that. It'll display my Google Analytics code, not my actual Google Analytics code, because I don't trust it. So if I add this function to my functions.php, it's not going to do anything. Refresh. Look at the source code here, footer. I don't see that code in there anyway. What I want to do is I want to add the action hook. This is the first time that we'll add this today, but we'll be using a lot. So I'm going to add action, and then WP footer is a built-in hook built into WordPress. So basically what this is saying is in the core, there's a function called doAction WP footer. When WordPress gets to that, it says, okay, doAction WP footer, and then doAction says, are there any other actions registered that should be called, any other functions registered that should be called when I run this WP footer action? And so when I do add action, WP footer, this function, WP training _ Google Analytics, I'm saying register my function in WordPress to the WP footer action. So we save it and upload it. And refresh. Look at this. There it is. There's my JavaScript. Does that make sense to you guys? And I mentioned it before, but there's another thing called a filter. It's really dark in here with that closed like that. There's another thing called a filter, which allows you to modify the value. In action, you can't technically modify the value. You can only do something when that action occurs. Now, sometimes an action will pass some variables that you can use to do stuff, and we'll see that.
Does the code have a list of all those actions that you can?
Well, let's look. The technical answer is going to be no, but you can get a good idea. Action reference. I think this is it. So these are all the hooks. Now, I don't think. All right. Can you see what I typed here? New to publish. New _to _publish. It didn't find it on this page. That's weird. Private to publish shows up though. So there are some actions that are kind of weird in WordPress, and they're very difficult to find. Because if we look at this comments, old status to new status, that's not, I don't think, it shouldn't be. What happened? Yeah. This is not the actual action. It's just a description of the action of what's happening. Old status, like in this example, is unapproved. New status is approved. This is the action. So there's several actions that happen when you publish a post, or could happen. If it's a scheduled post, it would be scheduled to publish. If it's just you just click publish when you're writing a post, that's new to publish. If you save it as a draft and then publish it, it could be draft to publish. If you search the core file with like Windows grep or something, and you search for draft_to_publish, it won't find anything, because it's coded in a way that it just has the transition variables. So basically it runs any action with whatever the current status is to the new status. And then you just kind of have to try to figure out what those statuses are. And there is actually an action, or maybe it's a filter that you can use to display what the statuses are that you're looking for. There's a plugin called Edit Flow. It adds like a ton of, or it allows you to add a ton of different actions. Edit Flow is basically used for some newspapers or magazines places. You know, you have a post and it's pre-edited, and that's the status, pre-edited. And then it goes to post-edited, and then it goes to approved, and then it goes to published. So by adding those statuses, you're basically adding actions. So if it goes from, approved to published, it would be approved_to_published would be the action. So if you have a plugin that performs an action when a post is published, and they're using Edit Flow, there may be a chance that it won't work when they publish your post, and they're going to come to you and say, how come my post didn't do what your plugin is supposed to do when I click publish? And then you find out they're using Edit Flow, and you say, oh, you just need to add this action to your workflow. So they would add a function to their themes, functions.php, if they wanted to, that performed the action and called your plugin function when that action was performed. So if it was, like I said, approved to published, it would be, add action, approved to published, and then your function. And then it would work for them. So basically, it's for these sort of filters and actions, it's unlimited, so it's hard to find them. I'm actually glad that it's in this list for the comments, but I wish they would also add it for posts. But otherwise, all of these will give you a good idea of what's going on. Admin head is one, but then there's also admin head page hook or admin head plugin name. So, and these are important. If you're running like certain jQuery on your plugin, and you only need that jQuery to run on your plugin options pages, you shouldn't include it in admin head because it'll run everywhere and it might run into conflict. So to reduce conflict, you use admin head-plugin_page, and if you search the code for admin head, you'd see what variables are being passed and how to get what your plugin page slug is going to be. Does that clear it up for you? Yeah?
That's So you created a custom function, and then you basically pulled WordPress where display it?
No. So WordPress tells me where it's going to display it, basically by the name, WP footer. So I'm placing the footer. It's going to display that code that I put in here. All I did was say, when you say do this action, also run this function.
Why would this be better than just putting it into that code into the input?
In this case, it probably wouldn't necessarily be better or worse. With one caveat being, if you wanted to, say in a multi-site environment, you wanted to have each multi-site have their own Google Analytics code, you could add some more functionality in this function that says, if blog ID, use this account ID. If another blog ID, use this account ID. And then you could also do that in the footer.php technically, but it'd be a little bit cleaner in here, I think. So each site could have its own analytics code.
We have one site we're running two.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we put one up in the header, and we put one in the footer, and things work fine.
You can put them both in the footer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause Google gives you a warning saying you shouldn't.
Yeah. I don't know what they do with their analytics, but if they're both on the same page, it's going to have the same effect. It doesn't matter where they are.
So you said when you're modifying, so you're modifying this function, right? Let's say you were modifying something. In order for it to do what you, perform the modified code, you have to do that add action.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
So I'm not modifying the footer function. I'm just telling it to run this function when it calls it.
Oh. But if you just want to modify let's say the footer function, you just copy the footer function in there and make your changes.
You probably wouldn't be able to modify the footer function without actually modifying the WordPress core.
Okay.
But you could add a footer.php and do whatever you want in it, and that would just, if we look at, in fact, let's look at the footer.php. It runs this WP_footer function, which is different from get footer. So the WP_footer function, actually, let's see if we can look at the code. It will call the action in this function. If you create a theme and you don't include the WP_footer function, it won't call that action. There you go. See, that function, all it does is call action. It says, do this action, WP_footer. So then any plugin or theme that you have installed and activated, if it has anything that says add action WP_footer, it's saying run this function when you run this action. Does that make sense? Same thing with filters. A little bit different filters because you can modify the variables. Okay, we're doing good. Custom page templates. Again, I have an example here. There's a pretty basic example. I basically just copied all of this from the page.php. The one difference is this section, article section. I copied that from content-page.php file, and I'm not doing the get template part thing here, just because I didn't want to add that. I knew we were going to not have enough time to deal with adding a bunch of these things. But if I wanted to, I could do get template part content and then page day or something. Create a file called content-pageday.php and then stick this article stuff in there. Still recording, it looks like. So, it should be showing. Still having connectivity issues.
All of it works.
This is disappointing. Thanks, UGA. Alright, let's see if Bing is working. I mean, my side seems to be working. Let's see a DNS issue. Sorry about this. Alright, Sheila, what was your question again?
Well, just basically, is there any way to make that, stage template global so that you can use it in other styles, like, housing?
Yeah.
Or would you just basically have to copy the file over each time?
Oh, I see. So you create multiple childs and you want to use that one over and over again? No, I don't think there's a way to do that. You just have to copy it over and over, which is kind of frustrating. Because you can't make a child theme a child of a child theme, or yeah, you can only have a parent-child relationship one time. You could, if you were developing your own parent theme, you just stick it in there, and then all the child themes would have it there. But if you're using a WordPress theme as your parent theme, and there's an update, you'll run the risk of losing that file. Yeah, I didn't fully understand your question before. Okay, so no more outside access. Well, our website is in New Jersey, so I guess that's like us in New Jersey. All right, we created a custom template. Now we're going to create a custom post type. And by the way, all the links in all these pages underneath explain in great detail. All right. So this is a lot of code. And we're going to stick this .php. Let me explain. All right, first we have an action, and it runs the function when WordPress calls the init action, which is basically one of the first things that WordPress does. There's another one, if you're dealing with cookies, use the WP action, because init is a little bit too late and the headers are already sent at that point, and if you're messing with cookies, then you'll get warnings that the header's already been written, and you need to write the headers the cookies before the headers. All right, so I'm calling this create resources post type. Create resources post type, and these are just all the labels. You have a name, singular name, so resources, resource, add new resource, add new resource again, edit, new, view, search, none found in trash, the colon type if you want to use one, and then the menu name, which is located here in the WordPress dashboard. And this labels array is called here in labels. The label is resources. And we're going to give it a description, training resources. And a lot of these are not necessarily set. Publicly queryable, true. We want to be able to search for it on the public side. You can change to false. There's a ton of different ways and combinations of ways that you can screw this up and make it do something you don't intend it to do. But you can just simply go back in there and just mess around and change it until it actually behaves the way you want. But I generally find that this setup works for me. So I don't want to exclude from search. I want to show it in the user interface. I want to show it in the menu. Capability type. We're going to comment that out right now. Metacat, the capabilities. So it's mapping the default capabilities. Hierarchical. Pages are hierarchical. Posts are not. So let's say again that what that means is a page can have a parent and a child or several children. Post, like a blog post, can't. So set this to true if you want to be able to have parents. Set it to false if you don't. The support line promise it will not go down again in the next 30 seconds. Okay. Page attributes. It's the same thing that we looked at with the templates. These are the page attributes here. It has a parent, it has a template, the order of the page. So for ours, we don't need revisions. We don't need trackbacks. We don't want comments or page or post formats. We're not going to look at this right now. We will in a second. As archive, that just means an archive in this sense is the list of posts. So we want to put that for sure. Archive is kind of a weird word in WordPress because it can mean like posts from June or posts from May. It can mean like a category listing or a taxonomy listing, or it could mean just a listing of all your latest posts. Kind of weird. Rewrite. You can, I usually just use the default, but I change the slug if I want to. Otherwise, I think it would use a label resources, but I just want to use resource as the rewrite rule. And all that does is in the URL, it'll say /resource. And then this function registers my post type resources with these arguments. And these arguments call these arguments. We save this and upload functions.php. And we refresh our page. Hopefully it works. See resources here. We've got our own custom post type. We can add a new resource, and we can call it WordPress website. The WordPress website is awesome, but this is an awesome source for WordPress documentation. I'm going to push it. Now, this is essentially useless. We can't really do anything with it right yet. But I want to add I want to add my own custom meta box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this line, register meta box callback, DB, add resources meta box. So in my example, I have this function, add resources meta box, which calls the add meta box function. And I don't know if we can look up all these things, but one of these is the function to call, or the function to reference. This is the title of the meta box, and this is the post type that meta box is associated with. I believe if you wanted multiple, you could add this as an array, multiple post boxes or post types. So this function is what will display meta box. So that's the function. This add meta box function will send the post object to my function. So it's important to have the post object in here. And I'm going to use the function get post meta, which is you call for the meta ID, the meta name, and this true or false value is whether or not it is a single value or multiple values. true means single. So it returns a single value, otherwise it will return an array of values. And so I call this resource URL because I want to track the URL for these post types. So when I display the post type, I can call that meta and just have a link to that resource. So that's the URL. And then this will actually be what gets displayed in the meta box. And it's just an input box. Resource URL as the name, and it will output the URL that exists. And we're going to upload this. And if we refresh, there's our WP training resource. So I can go to WordPress.org. Now, if I save this, click update, it's not going to work. See? You didn't believe me, did you? That's because we need to run an action on the save action of WordPress. So there's an action called save post. Call this function. And we'll add this to our function.php. So save post gets called when I click that update button or when I click publish. And I want it to call this function. The save post action sends the post ID. So I need to make sure I am getting the post ID. There's a couple things about this. Autosaves and inline edits. They can be problematic. If it's doing an autosave, you run the risk that it's going to overwrite your meta information. There's been times where it was doing autosave and it erased the meta because it's not grabbing that information. And then they click update, or they don't click update, it just does an autosave, and they come back later, and all that stuff is gone because it didn't handle it properly. So this is just the way that I handle it. Because if it does the autosave, and I'm running delete post meta, it's going to delete that post meta. So basically what I do is, and there's other things you could do, if it's doing an autosave or if the inline edit thing is requested, I just return out of this variable because I don't want to make any changes. So, assume they click publish. I check to see if the post variable, I like to use cover my bases. Check to see if it's set, make sure it's not empty, and then I run the update post meta. So I had get post meta here, update post meta, the post ID, the meta name, and then the meta value. If it is empty or it's not set, I just delete it. So you'll notice that I have an underscore in the front of my meta field. I'm going to first, should I upload that? So, refresh. Probably don't need to refresh, but add the URL, click update. Yeah. Good catch. See? It worked. So if I just go in here and I remove that underscore, just so you can see what the difference is. It's not going to change anything here. Update. It should have saved it. And if we open up custom fields, you'll see it's here. Any custom field that begins with an underscore is invisible, doesn't show up in the custom fields box. If it doesn't have an underscore, it will show up in the custom fields box. So I personally like it a little bit cleaner, so I use underscores in front of my custom field name on any of my plugins that I write if I'm displaying it in a special box. If I just want it to be in the custom field box, then I don't have an underscore. With that said, somebody could come up here and say, learn.com. Notice it has an underscore. Click update. Oh, I guess it doesn't do that anymore. It used to allow you to, I thought it used to allow you to do that. It's not though. Good. Never mind. So I'm just going to re-upload that and delete this. Okay. So we're still not quite there yet. At least for our purposes. We want to create a custom text on it. I have one ready to go here. And I'll paste it in here and we'll discuss it. Similar sort of thing that runs an action on init. Initialization. Create WP training category taxonomy. Create WP training category taxonomy. Those are the function names that get called when the init action is run. Similarly, we have our labels. So we're going to call this resource categories. Resource category is the singular name, etc. And then we're going to register the taxonomy. So it's a little bit different here, at least the way I do it. I don't know why I do it differently. I usually have an array here. You're registering the post type. This is the registering the taxonomy, the resource name. This is an array of what this taxonomy, what post type this taxonomy works with. So it'll only show up in the resources post type. I could add a comma and put post in here, a comma and page in here, and it'll show up there. But we just want to do it in resources. And then some basic, again, arguments. Is it hierarchical? True. That is like a category. If it's false, it's like a tag. Remember, categories can have parents, tags can't. The labels, again, is just this array. Show in UI, show tag cloud, true. The show tag cloud thing is a widget. And I don't know if you've ever seen a tag cloud. It's just basically a block of words, and some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller depending on how often those words are used. Query var, true. That's for the WordPress query stuff. The rewrite, we want to rewrite the slug to be resource dash cat, otherwise it will use underscore cat or dash cat. And we're going to ignore these capabilities right now. Upload my functions.php. Close this. Refresh. And there's our resource category. So it's just like a normal categories thing. So I want to put this in the website category. Update. And I'm going to add a new resource just for fun. WordPress Bible, blah, blah, blah. And this is going to be a book. And I don't know the website, so we'll just use Google. Publish. So we've got a resource categories. It does everything for us. We got a book category, we've got a website category. There's one resource in the book category and one resource in the website category. So I can click on that and just show everything in the book category. Go back to resources and see everything. Pretty easy, huh? Now let's go back and uncomment these things. The capabilities. And this is going to get into, I believe, your question last week about roles. Somebody's question. Capabilities are kind of confusing. Alright, I've enabled capabilities. Well, I refresh my page and it's saying, hey, you're trying to get to this resource, but you don't have permission. And it does it in a very childish way by saying cheating, huh? So now my resources are gone. One thing I usually base my stuff on is if I go to the core files, Adobe Admin includes, there's a schema.php file. And if you scroll like halfway down, you get to populate roles. And this is where you see them adding roles. This runs on install, by the way. And then they get the role and they add capabilities to the role. But I've already done all this for us. Explain what each one is doing. So I get the administrator role, and then I'm adding some capabilities. I'm adding the capability of administrator to edit resources, edit others' resources, edit private resources, edit published resources, delete others, delete private, delete published, read, and publish. For the categories, I'm adding the capability to manage resource categories, which basically means I can add, edit, and delete. For the editor role, I want them to be able to edit resources, edit others' resources, and edit published resources and publish resources, but not delete or none of the private resources. And then they can manage the categories. For authors, they can edit resources, and basically this means they can edit their own resources. Edit published resources. They can edit their own published resources. And then they can publish resources. And then contributor, and these are the four main roles built into WordPress, apart from subscriber, which just has the right to read. Contributor can only edit resources, which means they can add a new post type called resource. They can't publish it. They can save it as a draft. I think if they click publish, it'll be in review, and then an editor or an author can go ahead. Actually, just an editor. Yeah, an editor can go ahead and then approve it. So, I'll upload that. And hopefully my resources show back up. I'm an administrator, so I can do all the good stuff. So, if you wanted to, you could add a role specifically for the resources. And then you could give that, instead of giving administrator that permission, although you probably want to give administrator it anyway, but you could add a role called resource writers. And you have a staff of 5 people, and they're all resource writers. You put them all in that role, and then the only thing they can do is edit resources. You remove all the other role permissions from them. They can log into WordPress, they just see resources, and they can add and do whatever they want in there. So it's pretty flexible. It allows you to do a lot of cool things like that. And I just wanted to kind of show. Again, roles, capabilities, get role, add capability, add role would be another one. Yeah. There's no such thing.
I'm trying to wrap my head around when you would want to create custom type copies.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of the time you did that on the site?
Yeah. I can't show you one because it's NDA, but I did work on a financial company. They track their investments in like oil and gas and stuff like that. And they had several different things they needed to keep track of. Their project, which had, I can't remember the taxonomies we added for that. I think, well, they had projects, they had notes for those projects, they had companies related to those projects, or contacts related to those projects. I don't know if we did any taxonomies for them, but there's a plugin that I've written, and I'll show it to you and everyone else in the world. It's for this company that I do a lot of work for. It's called Issue Manager, and it's a custom post type of articles. And the way that this plugin works is it's a magazine manager. You write articles and you attach those to a issue taxonomy. And when you're ready to publish that issue taxonomy, you change the taxonomy. You know, I did some more complicated things that we won't get into today with this. We change it to live, and then it shows up on the front page. So they can add all their articles and publish them. And then when they're ready, set that issue as live. So here's some articles, and I have issue categories, which is kind of like what we just did with the resource categories. And then I have issues, which is the added functionality I have, and I actually have issue tags. So if we look at issues, you'll see I have some. This is basically a tag like, it's actually more like category. I do some magic stuff to remove stuff. It's basically a category. There's an issue status. You can do an issue order. These are all added things that I did, you know, using filters and function and hooks. We added the ability to put a cover image, a PDF version. Nice. Okay. Good. So this would be one reason to add a taxonomy. Another reason would be you don't want to muddy up your categories. You have a blog that has categories. You could add the categories taxonomy to your custom post type, but you want to keep them separate for some reason. So you have a category taxonomy for your specific post type that's just separate from the normal blog category. Or perhaps there's, you know, a membership reason to do this. Only certain members have access to this taxonomy and this post type. So there's a number of reasons. Does that make sense? And Issue M is available at issuem.com. But I don't make much money off of that, because I built it for them. Alright. So we added permissions. Alright. So let's look. We went through the template hierarchy, and it's confusing. But if we go to the menu here, actually, we preview this post here. It's not giving me the option. I don't know if this is a bug or something. There's no way to view the post from here. You can usually do that. But if I go to resource, oh, ha. I'm glad that this failed and I forgot. So technically, when I go to, I think it's resources. When I go to resources, I should get the list of those posts I wrote. Well, when you add them, you have to go to permalinks. You have to resave them because it's caching the rewrite rules. And if you don't save them, it doesn't work. And they say, there you go, see, resource. So you notice something. I have resource, but it says blog archives up here. This isn't a blog. This is my resource list. It acts like a blog. It's the same sort of template as a blog, but it's not. So in our template hierarchy, we can create a archive-postname.php, which I read the archive.php, and we're going to create this file, archive-postname, resource. Right. So check to see if it has posts, and I change it here so the page title says resources rather than blog archive. This is a 2011 function, as long as it has posts to this. Again, I commented out this get template part and I just stuck it all in here. I removed a bunch of stuff. One thing that is important that I changed is I'm not using categories. So I need to use the get the term list function, which calls or sends the post ID of the current post in this loop, resource cat, which is the taxonomy, registered taxonomy, and then the separator, which is just a comma. And then output. So if I save this and upload this and refresh, it says resources. My resource type is book.
This is the way to create multiple post pages.
This is for a template for your custom post type. Yeah.
So if you have one where it's a blog, you set that in the read as a blog. So if you want one that you create from the gallery,
Mm-hmm.
you go to this to
As long as it's a post type, yeah. Yeah. So we're going to have an issue here. I want to see all the resources that are books. It says nothing found. Now, if you're not prepared for this, you might think, oh, the rewrite rules are screwed up. But I just reset them. And you're going to go in there and you're going to switch them to default, switch them back and forth. You keep trying this over and over again. And then you're going to start injecting code into different files to see what's happening. The reason that nothing is found is because the default query uses post as the post type. But this is just a taxonomy I created. It's also a taxonomy I created for a specific post type, but WordPress doesn't really know that. So it's looking for all the posts that are in the resource category book, which there are none. So there's nothing found. It's not a 404 not found page. It's just saying there was no resources found. So let's create another page. No, actually, it's the taxonomy page. Taxonomy dash resource underscore cat, I believe. Wait, did I not the right link? No, I don't have the right link up there. That's not right. Ignore. That's our symbol. Alright, upload this. And guess what? It still doesn't work. But we're getting closer. And just an example, I'm going to put a little H1. Here we are. Just to prove that we are on this page. So it's all good. But again, the issue here is that all I'm doing is have posts, which, like I just said, by default, the post type is post. There's no post in that resource category. So, let's get down to this page, and I reiterate this. My custom taxonomy isn't working. Default assumes post type equals post for the loop. We need to add some code, which I have here. This is the recommended way to modify main query. We'll add this to our functions.php. There's an action called pre-get-post. And I'm going to say register this function with this action. This action sends the query, which is the main query that is generated when WordPress is viewing this page. So I check if is main query, which is a function. If that's true, and we're looking at a resource cat, then I want to set the post type to resources. Now this is a little bit more complicated. And I'll show you the difference here. There's several lines of that. You kind of need to know what you're doing. If I just go in here and just do the wrong way, query post, query string, I think, and post type equals resources. And upload this. I have that commented out. Refresh. It worked. See, that seems a lot easier. It's just one line, but it's just not a good way to do it. Refresh, it should say not found. And then go back to functions.php. This is the proper way to do it. Yeah. Why didn't it work? I probably typo. Queries main query get resource cat. Yeah. Resource count shouldn't matter the. Oh, did I not upload it? I think that was the problem. There we go. I was uploading the wrong file. I'm so used to clicking the buttons up here, but I don't have enough real estate on this. Okay. So, this action is the proper way to do it. Okay, so another template file that we have to worry about is the single. So if we go here, we'll see all this stuff. And I have that on this slide. single dash resources. And for this, I changed some wording, resource navigation. Again, I used that get the term list, so it got the categories for resources, and we'll upload it. And this is what it looks like now, and that's what it looks like after the change. So it just adds our stuff. Not major changes. I basically copied the single.php and made some minor changes and added the resource thing. One thing I did also want to add is href equals get post meta post ID resource URL through the echo. Visit this resource. Upload. And there it is. And if we go back to resource, you go to the WordPress website one, you see the same thing. So that's used for the custom post method. And another thing you want to do is if we go to my website, I mean, if we're just at my website, there's no link to the resources, so we'll go to the menus, and we'll have to add a custom one. Resources. Add to the menu, save menu, refresh. Resources. And there's our resources. How's that looking? Did this already for the custom taxonomy. And then we have next week's class, which is plugins. We discussed hooks today. We're going to do some filter stuff. We're going to create a shortcode, create a widget, and we're going to use I18N, internationalization. Do you know why it's called I18N? Because there are 18 characters in between the I and the N. We're going to create a basic plugin with a shortcode and widget and add it to our site. And I haven't decided what that plugin is going to look like, but it'll be pretty fun. Any questions or issues or problems?
The function here,
Yeah.
your file name function is belong to line 4
4.
before the parent.
Yeah.
But just to be safe, you're saying it's not defined.
Yeah, if not function exists,
Yeah.
create it. Yeah. Just to be safe. It's just good practice.
But you're basically overriding what you got from the parent.
Right.
So you're going to run it first.
Right. So the parent should have that in there in case a child theme wants to override it. Because if it doesn't, it'll be a conflict. It's most important to be in the parent theme if function not exists, or if not function exists. Otherwise, if somebody creates a child theme and says, I want to rewrite this function, the only option they would have is to modify the parent theme, and then if it gets updated, you lose those updates. So it's most important in a parent theme to add the if not function exists.
But when you use the WordPress ones, they all got that.
You should. Yeah. Hopefully. I don't know about older ones, but all the themes, unlike the plugins on WordPress.org, all the themes are vetted by WordPress developers, and a lot of them go through a lot of work to fix issues and stuff that the WordPress team sees. With the plugins, you just ask for permission to post to the plugin repository. There's just so many plugins. There's no way to vet them, except for kind of crowdsourcing, which is they say it works or it doesn't work, or they give it 5 stars or 1 star or something like that. Any other questions? Was this useful? We touched the surface of themes. I was telling John this morning that it could really be a semester long to go into all the stuff you can do with themes. But to get you started. You're welcome.